Okay, good evening everyone. So glad you all joined us here in the studio and as well in cyberspace, mainly on the west coast of the United States. I gave a brief introduction to Korbanos, which maybe I'll make an entire video out of at some point. But the first thing we notice in Parsha VaYikra, first of all, VaYikra is really called Torah Kohanim, the laws or procedures for the Kohanim, for the priests. There's so many procedures, there's so many details that we're going to find throughout the book of VaYikra. So what we're going to just start with is the first verse, which doesn't really seem to have anything to do with Korbanot. I mean, I shouldn't say that. With the details, I should say. It's more of a general idea. It's like a very general concept, and it's very fundamental. So it starts off by mentioning, the Kliyakar starts off by mentioning that you should notice that the first word has a small aleph. And I printed it out on the source sheet, VaYikra. See the aleph? It's the fifth letter, Vav Yud Kuf Resh, and then there's an aleph. So VaYikra El Moshe, God called to Moses. V'yidaber Hashem Elav me'ohel moed. And he spoke to him from the Ohel Moed. And that's the first verse. Second verse, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'yamarta alehem. Ready for this? Adam. Adam in the Torah usually refers to Jews, Israelites, and Ha'adam refers to mankind. In this case, we're going to see that this word Adam does not mean Jew and Jew alone, but also mankind, as we'll see through Rashi and we'll see through the general concept, because the very first offering that is being mentioned is going to be what we call a burnt offering, which is entirely, except for the innards, is basically brought up on the altar and given to Hashem, and also the blood that's thrown around the altar. But the idea is that let me just preface this also with certain general principles of Korbanot. Number one, if somebody does a sin intentionally, that means knowing full well what they're doing, no korban is brought. Okay, a korban is not brought. The only thing that will help is tshuva. Now, aside from that, there are many types of offerings: guilt offerings, sin offerings, offerings when you're in a very happy mood and a thankful mood, after a woman gives birth, on and on and on. There's so many different types. Now, they are brought from either those three animals that I mentioned earlier, which is the cattle, a cow, could be a sheep or a lamb. And then if the person is not wealthy enough, doesn't have the financial ability in the burnt offering, which I'll explain in a second, can bring a pigeon, a certain type of a bird. And beyond that, we're going to also learn about a mincha offering. A mincha offering is a vegetable offering, meaning it's from grains. And there's going to be oil. But the interesting thing is that when we get to the mincha offering, it's also called a nefesh. So I'm going to tell you about the Ramban's idea behind why we bring korbanot, and the Kliyakar brings this idea down, that it's a soul for a soul. In other words, we should feel as if this is what we deserve. Okay? That we're giving our soul, or the soul of the animal, in place of our own soul, which deserves some type of a punishment. Now, while we're talking about a mincha offering, which has no soul, the Torah actually calls, in other words, here we say, an Adam ki yakriv michem, when a man offers. And so forth throughout, it talks about when somebody offers. But when it comes to the mincha offering, which you can see in chapter 2, verse 1, it says nefesh, when a soul offers, which we're going to learn that it's the soul of a man when he works hard for his money, and we Jews know a lot about money and working hard, that that the sweat and the blood and the efforts that go into earning that dollar or that shekel is you put your soul into it. So you use your money to buy these korbanot. You're using money to buy the flour, even though it's the minimum, most, I'm not going to call it inferior because it's not. In fact, it's a very high level because a poor person who can't afford an animal brings this, and it atones just like a rich person who brings a cow. Has the exact same, and I'm going to say maybe even has more, because it has the word nefesh. He's actually giving his soul through this mincha, the cake or bread offering that he's bringing. It's a flour offering, actually. Okay, with that in mind, we're going to start by talking about this small aleph. So it says, the Kliyakar brings down that it's a small aleph. Oh, very good. Where is there another anomaly of either a small aleph or a large aleph in the Tanakh? I'll tell you where. 1 Chronicles. Interestingly enough, what do you think? I mean, anybody that's read Chronicles could probably quote the first verse, right? It's history of the world. And it starts off with the name Adam. Adam, huh?
Adam Shes.
Right. Adam, Seth, on and on. So what do we have? It's amazing that you have a large aleph by the word Adam in its 1 Chronicles, verse 1. Here it is. Adam, Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Mechalel, Jared. On and on and on throughout, right, the history of the world. Which is obviously significant because we are talking about when a man, and I use the word Adam, and we're going to see in Rashi, he uses the word Adam as Adam Arishon. And we're going to talk a lot about Adam Arishon in tonight's class. Adam Arishon is the first man. Okay, so he points out that the aleph is small, as if it's not there. As if, remember, as if it's not there. And if it wasn't there, what would the word say? VaYikra. Not as in the Kliyakar, but as in b'mikra. As in when God meets up with Bilam. You can look on your source sheet. It's in Numbers 23, verse 4. It says, God chanced upon Bilam. VaYikra Elokim el Bilam. Okay, so what is so interesting about this? That the same word, if there's no aleph, is used for Moses and for Bilam. So the Kliyakar is going to make a proposal. Of course, this is not a new thing. It's brought down throughout Chazal. That there is an equality or some kind of equation somewhere, somehow, Moses is equal to Bilam in his prophecy. But he points out, don't make the mistake to think that they were on the same level. There's something equal about them in their prophecy. And he's going to introduce the idea of what that is. Okay? And we're going to learn a lot about prophets and prophecy tonight. So if he says that, I'll just read the words because he's just so sweet. Ki'ilu nemar v'yakar. Tamo shel davar, the reason is lahashvot nevuah Moshe el nevuat Bilam. As it says, we just read 23:4 in Numbers. Okay, very nice. But guess what? We also have a verse in Deuteronomy 34:10, which says that there was no other prophet who arose in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. So how can we say that Bilam was equal in any level if we say there was nobody like Moses? Correct? Well, if you look carefully at the verse, it says, Lo kam b'Yisrael kamosha od, aval b'umos kam. Meaning, it's true. In Israel there won't be, and there wasn't, and there never will be, and there never was. But amongst the nations, there was, and that was Bilam. Now, one thing he wants to make clear. After that statement, you may mistakenly think that what we're trying to say is that Bilam and Moses were equal. No. Eina peroshia Bilam shavel Moshe ben Nevuah chalila. God forbid. Don't think that Moses and Bilam were equal in their prophecy. But this is what we're about to say, and this is the nitty-gritty of tonight's class. Ready for this? And he's going to explain it, and we're going to really grasp it. That Moses was able to grasp more prophecy than what he was actually fit and prepared to receive on his own. Meaning, there was a bonus. God gave him Tosefet Shefa, an added amount of prophecy, more than... So what does a prophet do? There's prophet schools, right? So you go to school and you learn how to work on your character. That's the basis. If you don't have that, you can't. If you haven't worked on your character, you're not a tzaddik, you're not righteous, there's very little chance you'll be advanced in this school. Of course, you have to be married, and you have to be wealthy, and you have to have a whole bunch of other things but you basically have to work on your character and nullify a good amount of your ego to be able to be a true servant of God. Now, we know Bilam was not such a righteous person, far from it. So he too, now it's easy to grasp what is interesting about a guy like Bilam, who was able to say things that, wow, I mean, we're talking about the times of the Mashiach. He was able to see things that the other prophets weren't even able to grasp. And so basically, this is how we're going to equate it. But the proof text that even Moses received prophecy more than he was able to attain on his own was from the verse in Deuteronomy. It's actually the same verse, Deuteronomy 34:10. If we go back to it, it says, whom the Lord knew face to face. It doesn't say that Moses knew God, but that God caused himself to become known to Moses. So it's top down. It's called Tosefet Shefa. It's this abundance of spirituality that came from above down to Moses. There was what we'll call the bonus of prophecy over and above his own abilities. And I could just read his words because it's just so beautiful. He says, as the pasuk says, Asher Yada'u Hashem, and it doesn't say Asher Yadu Es Hashem. Fine. So what is it trying to tell us? Shehu mitzad hachanato lo yada es Hashem al zeh ofen. The extra prophecy that we're talking about, it wasn't coming from the bottom up. Kim Hashem Yadu v'natan lo tosefet shefa. And where was this? B'Yisrael, as we already mentioned. Moses was that bet in front of the word in Israel doesn't always mean in Israel. In other words, the bet doesn't always mean in, but it can mean, and does here also mean, on account of. Moses' extra prophecy was for our sake. Moses didn't need it for his own sake. It was in order to give over. As every verse I tell you, it says, when it says, V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, what's the word lemor mean? To say over. God spoke to Moses for what purpose? So that Moses would then in turn say over to us what we needed to do. So he wants to say it's b'schut Yisrael. In other words, there wouldn't be another prophet in Israel, or the schut of Israel. What about all the other prophets? You want to hear about all the other prophets? They were only able to achieve, right? They only achieved the prophecy that they were on the level to achieve, nothing more. None of them received any bonus like Moses. Moses was the only prophet to receive a bonus. Now when it comes to the Umos HaOlam, the nations of the world, there was one that stood up. We'll call him Bilam. And it was also L'Kvodan Shel Yisrael. It was also for our benefit. I mean, if you just look at at the words that he spoke, were really just unbelievable. We're not doing that tonight. We'll do it maybe when we go through Parshas Balak. But also there is an idea that in the future, the Goyim, the nations, might come to Hashem and say, why are we not getting the benefits that the Jews have gotten? If you would have sent us a prophet, then we would have been good boys and girls. We would have done exactly what we were supposed to do. And God's going to turn around to them and say, I did just that. It's exactly why I sent Bilam. He was on a very high level of prophecy, and you didn't even listen to him because he talks, what is he? Oh, it's just beautiful what he speaks about the Jewish people. And for all those anti-Semites out there, wherever you are, read Bilam. Okay. So he repeats the idea that both Moses and Bilam also received much more than he. So I'll use numbers. These are my own numbers, and see if you can grasp them. Let's imagine in our minds that Moses built himself up to be a prophet, and he worked himself to 99.9%. But God gave him an extra 10.1%, so the Moses is at 110% prophecy. But there's that Tosefet, there's that 10% plus bonus. Let's take a guy like Bilam. Let's say he only worked either 5% or minus 5%, but he was hovering around 0, plus or minus 5%. God gave him another 95%, so he topped him off at 100. But again, to make sure the equation is not equal, Moses is still the greatest prophet we ever had. He's not equal to Bilam. They both have what we call Tosefet prophecy, an extra shefa of prophecy. And now, something about all these other prophets is that what they do is, since they do acquire the prophecy that they're fit for, we call that devucha bo be'etzem. It actually is clinging to them like glue to their essence, and it never departs from them. Whereas both Moses and Bilam, there's going to be a part of their prophecy that will depart, as we'll see. Even Moses, when God says, Lech Re, go down, because the children of Israel were involved with the golden calf, we know that Moses himself descended from his level of greatness. God said, and why was he so great? Because of us. I mean, I'm not putting down Moses. I'm just saying that extra Tosefes we already read was on our account. So if we're sinners and we're doing the wrong thing, so then he also loses that extra shefa because it was not necessary. If it took a while till Yom Kippur that we were forgiven, and we'll see that he got it back. So not only did he lose it for a period of time, but he got it back, and we'll see that all in Yirtzeh Hashem tonight as well. So the things that the level of prophecy that the other prophets are able to achieve, we call that atzmut kinyan davek. It's mamish part of their essence that they acquire. And I want to mention about when you learn Torah and you hear a piece of Torah that absolutely resonates. It's like, wow, blows you out of the water, shoots your neshama, your soul's like flying high, and you really feel that you acquired that piece of Torah. That Torah should never leave you. You'll remember it till your dying day because you made an acquisition. So too, when these prophets prophesied, that prophecy never left them. But anything that you acquire as a bonus, let's say, for example, you go to work. You work 40 hours, and they're hard and they're tough, and you get your check. Okay, it's a nice thing to thank your employer. But it's coming to you. It's yours. I mean, it's Derek Eretz to thank him and have a smile because you want to be back on the following Sunday when you get paid on Friday. Here we get paid once a month. But okay, so if you get paid every week, you smile, you thank him. But it's coming to you. What happens if you got an envelope and it's full of money? I mean, the truth is, you don't really care. It doesn't matter how many bills. It's the very fact that you got a bonus. You'll count it, I'm sure. There's no question you're going to count it. But whether it's plus 5, minus 5, of what you thought the bonus might be, it's irrelevant. You're truly grateful. But it can come and it can go. There's something about that bonus that is awry, which we're going to talk about. It's transient and it's by chance, which is actually what we're leading into. This b'mikra, the idea of without the Alef on VaYikra, right? Without the Alef on VaYikra, and it's just b'mikra, that's the bonus that we're referring to, where it can come and can go. It's transient. It's not fixed like your salary. It's a bonus. And that's why he says, anything that the prophet is able to receive more than his own preparation for, that's called the bonus. It's by chance. I don't know if that's the best translation, but we're saying that it was not unearned. Okay? Rak matat Elokim, it was a gift from God. That's why it says V'yikar by both Moses and by Bilam, to teach you that there was something equal in both of their ability of prophecy, and that was b'mikri nosaf al haroi lahem mitzad atzmutam. That was the additional prophecy that both received more than what was part of their essence. Now he claims at this point that this actually resolves what Rashi mentions. Now, what's the problem? We didn't even look at Rashi. So when we look at Rashi, what's going to be the problem? With a careful, sensitive eye, we'll see it. And if we don't see it, he'll point it out. It's still number 1 on the source sheet. It says, God, this is on Numbers 23:4 by Bilam. Rashi says the word V'yikar has an expression of arai, lashon arai, which means a casual meeting or occurrence, b'mikra, by chance. It also has a language of ganai, and another language of tumat keri, tuma. Okay? So how can we apply, his question is, which he didn't even state, how can you apply these words to Moses' prophecy? I understand the arai part because we just explained it. We spent the last 15, 20 minutes talking about it. But tuma? You're going to say that something about Moses' prophecy is tumadik? Well, he's going to tell us. What do you think the answer is? That's why there's an Alef. If the Alef was totally taken away, then yeah, you could say it's all these meanings. But once the Alef is still there, we know the Alef always represents God in some sort of way, the unity of one, Chachma. Okay, so there's no Tuma involved over there. So let's read what he says. Ubezem meyushav masha perish Rashi. This resolves what Rashi explains by Lashon Arai and Lashon Tuma. So he begins by telling us already that we already explained Arai, but he says, Hoyadai be'echad mehem litein hevdel bein v'yikar le'v'yikra. It would have been fine just for having one of these explanations to tell me the difference between the word v'yikar and the word v'yikra. Ela lefisha Rashi sover gamkein. The Nevuah Moshe hayis b'mikra. You know what? That Rashi also understood, as if the Aleph is not there, that you could read the word as v'yikar and therefore b'mikra, and it's not be'etzem mitzad hachanato. It's not really part of the essence of what he worked for in prophet school. Lefi kashalo. So what really is the problem? What was bothering Rashi? Lama lo niktav v'yikar below Alef klal. Why is it called v'yikra? Just called v'yikar and move on with life, which is right. If we're going to say the Aleph is not there, then make it not there. That's why he's coming to answer and saying, Lefisha Lashon V'yikar, it's true, it's Mashma Lashon Arai, which is B'mikra, like we already explained. But it also implies a language of Tuma. And Ze'eno Shayek Klal Kalpei Moshe. You cannot use this concept when you talk about Moses and his prophecy. There's no Tuma, there's no contamination. Yes? Tuma. As opposed to Tahara, the Tuma. Chalila. He has the word Chalila, which means God forbid. Hashem, right? Lekach niktav Alef. So there was. God made sure the Aleph was there, but it was made small by Moshe. To what? Lahotzi min lashon mikre shel tuma. To exclude, to get rid of any concept and idea that Tuma is involved in Moses' prophecy. But it was written small, and therefore, when you read it, V'yikar, to teach you what? That also the prophecy of Moses was arai, meaning by chance, b'mikra, mitzat hayot nosaf, al hachanato. It was additional shefa, tosefet shefa, additional providence, more than his own ability was to prepare himself for. But the opposite, meaning Tuma, you cannot come and say it all. Clear as day, clear as mud. So he says, V'choliot, it's very possible. Shezedat Midrash. This is exactly the opinion what the Midrash was talking about on this verse, which mentions the language like this. You might think, is that even possible, that when God spoke to Moses, it was for Moses' own sake? No. Remember, the Torah says, Lamor, V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe Lamor. At least in our verses, he called to Moses and he spoke to him from the tent, saying. Whatever the word saying, it always means to tell over to the Jewish people. Litzarech Yisrael diber imo. It was for the sake of the Jewish people that God spoke to Moses. Lo litzarech atzmo. Not for his own sake. But he claims, the Kliyakar says, this medrash is still lacking a certain amount of clarity. Because how would it ever come upon your mind? Why would you ever think for a moment that God spoke all these mitzvahs, remember the 613 mitzvahs, for Moses' sake anyway? You got women, right? You got Kohanim, you got all these different situations of people and cases in the land. You know? I mean, it's like crazy. Why would you ever think that God spoke about all these mitzvahs just to Moses for his own sake? And he asked a rhetorical question. Was he alone? Was Moses alone when God says, Anochi, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no others? Right? I am the Lord your God, first command, and v'lo yeh lecha, and you shouldn't have any others? No, we were all there at the Revelation. All the Jews heard at least the first two commandments, which could be that was all the commandments at once. That we're actually talking about this great level of prophecy that Moses had, because it was for our sake, as we mentioned before. Shezacha Moshe l'viyakar, and Moses merited what we call viyakar, meaning the additional tosefet. L'nevuas mikris shetosefet lo yeter michdei hachanata. He repeats it over again to really drill it into us, that the prophecy that Moses received was much more than he was even ready to handle. Shedibar Hashem ito panim apanim. And we see that God spoke to him face to face. B'schutu, for our sake. B'schut Yisrael. Below ba'avot, not for his own sake. And that's what we mean when it says, L'tzarech Yisrael diber imo. It was for the sake, it was for our sake that he spoke. L'tzarcham l'zacha. It was because of us that he merited that extra prophecy, not for his own sake. As it says, Lo kam navi bi Yisrael. The bet is a language of ba'avor. That's the bet is a prefix to a word, and it can mean many things. Like I said, in, with, for. Here it means on account of Israel. Therefore, when Israel sinned, what did God say to Moses? Look in Shmos, look in Exodus 32:7. That's number 3 on the source sheet. God said to Moses, go down, go and descend, for your people that you have brought up from the land of Egypt have acted corruptly. This is when Moses didn't even know that the Jewish people were involved with the golden calf. God informs him, and he tells him, go down. Go down how? Migdulatcha. Not to physically descend, although that's also the meaning, but that you, Moses, you have to go down from your high level that I put you on, because it was only for their sake, and since they involved themselves with the golden calf, there's no need for you to have that additional shefa, additional providence of prophecy. And that's what the Kliyakar says. Hainimo tosefet shefa sheniten lo ba'avur Yisrael. You're going to go down from your greatness, the extra greatness that was granted to you. V'achar hamachila, but after the Jewish people were forgiven, hutrach lefaresh shechazer Moshe l'kadmuto. That Moses, after the Jewish people were forgiven, which we talk about on Yom Kippur, several months later, Moses was then replaced or put back to that greatness, as if you look at Exodus 33:11, which should be number 4. See, then the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as a man would speak to his companion, and he would return to the camp. Now, all this is taking place when between the time of the sin of the golden calf until the time of well, now we're talking about the time of after Yom Kippur. So during that time, Moses had descended, right? From the time of the golden calf until the day after Yom Kippur, or Yom Kippur itself, Moses had descended. But once the Jews were forgiven on Yom Kippur, so then Moses would be able to speak with the Lord face to face. And that's what the verse is referring to. Okay, so next paragraph, he brings down a medrash. So why do children, Jewish children, where would you think they start learning the Bible? You would think Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, maybe even Noah with all the animals and the ark. You see many, especially in Israel, the Israeli zoos, they all have Noah's ark and all the different animals. Where would children learn from? Where would they start? Deuteronomy? Exodus? Where would they start? Adam and Eve? Maybe it's a little bit, wait till they get to be bar mitzvah, because it involves, having children. I don't know. But guess what? We all know, whoever lives in Jerusalem or in a Jewish community, that all the Cheder boys, they all start learning VaYikra. VaYikra. And why? He says because, he asks in a question for him. Lama matchilin hatinokos lumod min parshas karbanos. Why do the children learn, the first thing they learn is about korbanos, offerings. So he says, Ma ha-korbanos tahorim af tinokos kain. Just like children are absolutely pure without any blemish, so too the korbanos are. I'm not going to go there, but he does mention like this, that the words where it says a sheep less than a year, it's many places, that's the type of offering. Kvasim b'nei shana. What's a keves? A keves, kaf, bet, shin, is a sheep. A sheep of less than a year. So there's a little bit of a play on words, even though it's different letters. Two of them are the same, but kaf, bet, samech. What's kaf, bet, samech? Kabes, lekabes. Kibusim, a mechona kvisa, to launder, to wash, to bleach. So too, just like the sheep, less than a year is what is brought up in many cases, it's shemekapsim avonos ha'adam. They cleanse the sin of man, v'oisin oisin katinov ben shana. And it makes us, I love this, like you're born again. Like you are a brand new child. A child of less than a year old. Can't beat it, right? Hallelujah. I just love it. Okay. So, ba'avur zeh ha'alef katana. And that's why the aleph is made small. That it hints that the children start learning here. And guess what? What is it about the word? It's really a letter. Aleph. It's one letter with a strike down the middle and two little yods on the side. But guess what? It's also a word. And what's the word? Aleph. Aleph means to learn or to teach. That's why in Israel, opan. It's not like a U-L-P-A-N, but an Aleph, Lamed, Pei Nun. Ulpan, Aleph. And I want you to look, I believe there's a verse here that I brought down. If you look in number 5 on the source sheet, it says Job 33:33. It's really just the last two words. But if not, you listen to me, be silent, and I will teach you wisdom. What's the last two words? Al-afcha chachma. The word aleph means teaching. Okay? Teaching and to be taught as well. So that's why the VaYikra, the children begin with VaYikra, because all it's about attaining and learning wisdom. So it's from the Aleph, it's from the concept of Aleph. So he says, Limud Zehu Barosh, it's the first letter of the alphabet. You're going to teach them what? Where do you start? With Z and go backwards? You know what I mean? I don't know what the French alphabet is, but I guess it's the same, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G?
Yeah, and Aleph, Bet.
Okay, Aleph. Aleph, Bet. So Aleph is the
alphabet.
Alphabet.
Alphabet. Aleph, Bet.
That comes from the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Because you know why? Because when, before the Tower of Babylon, first of all, God spoke Hebrew and created the world, right? He looked into the Torah, which is written in Hebrew. It says he looked into the Torah and created the world, and he spoke, and the world was created. So what language did he speak? The same language we all spoke for the first 1,000+ years that we were on the planet, and that was all Hebrew. And then from the Tower of Babylon, that we all were dispersed and spoke different languages. But it all originates from the alphabet, the ABCs. Alphabet. So you have here, he says, that since the first letter, and they're katan, so therefore the katanim, the children, learn from the first letter. Okay, then he brings another idea about this Alef. Well, it's something we just said. It's a lashon of limud. It's the language of learning. And here's the verse. He brings it down in Job 33:33, which hints that what? Shein halimud mitkayem ki im b'misha machtin et atzmo. That it's not possible to learn unless one makes themselves small. How do you think you can acquire wisdom when you're so full of yourself? It's impossible. The only way to learn is to become a little bit more objective, right? You have to be able to diminish yourself to a certain extent. So that's what it's talking about, making yourself small so that you can learn. So too, you know that Moses was the humblest man of all. And I'm not saying because I know, I know because the Torah said so. But he ran away from authority. You know, he was like going to be the next Pharaoh. He was like pretty high up there. But when God asked him to be his messenger, what does he say? Look in Exodus 4, verse 10. Do I have that here? I might have skipped it. He says, Lo ish devar manochi. So I guess I didn't bring it down. Exodus 4, verse 10. He says, I am not a man of words. What do we see about all the politicians? No politician would ever say that. So he ran away from shrara, authority. Okay. How are we doing so far, guys? Okay. So the next verse. That was just the first verse. This is the pace we go. Huh? Anything to drink. Sweet. That's good. So verse 2 says, Adam ki yakriv michem korban lahashem. A man. Now, we're not saying a man versus a female, but we're talking about a man. The word Adam usually means a Jew, and Ha-Adam usually means the human race. In this case, at least we're talking about the burnt offerings. Let me explain. I started to, but I didn't really completely finish. This is going to be a voluntary offering for an intentional sin. Remember I mentioned intentional sins don't bring any offerings? That wasn't entirely true. Anytime there's a punishment mentioned in the Torah, which all the negative commandments basically have, so you wouldn't be able to bring an offering for any one of the 365 commandments if you violated them intentionally. But a positive mitzvah, which usually does not carry a punishment, there are a few that do, it's just a lost opportunity. That's what it is. When you have a positive mitzvah and you fail to do it, there's no punishment. But what is your punishment? The lost opportunity to come close to Hashem. The point of doing mitzvahs, the root of the word mitzvah is tzadik vav, and Chazal tell us the word tzadik vav means to connect, l'chaber. We do mitzvahs in order to commune, to have that intimate relationship with God through our deeds, through our mitzvahs. Now, if someone failed to do a positive mitzvah, oh well, the punishment is the failure of loss of that opportunity to come close to God. It never comes back. However, this burnt offering is an opportunity. Now, if you look on the sheets that I gave you, copied from the art scroll, it says at the bottom right, 1:3, A burnt offering may be brought by one who has intentionally committed a sin for which the Torah does not prescribe a punishment, one who failed to perform positive commandments, one who had sinful thoughts, and by everyone who comes to Jerusalem for the 3 pilgrimage festivals. What's the point? Similarly may be brought by anyone who wishes to raise his spiritual level. You want to come close to Hashem, you want to raise your spiritual level, whether it's a result of missing out on a positive mitzvah that there's no punishment listed, or because you just want to come close. Bavakasha, the world is yours. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. So he says right away, interestingly enough, that this verse begins in a singular language. Because when you read it, it says, right, Adam ki yakriv. The man, that's okay that it's singular, but he's yakriv. He's offering up. It's singular. But the latter part of the verse, it says, right, min ha-behemot, min ha-bakar, min ha-tzon, takrivu et korbanchem. Right? So we understand that in the Hebrew, right, that you shall bring your korban, but it's you plural. Okay? And it's offerings. So Rashi on that verse, by the way, you might have to go back. No, it's on this page 3. It's number 6 on the. It says at the bottom, you shall bring, number D, A, B, C, and D. I wrote it down here. You shall bring, takrivu. The plural form of the verb teaches that 2 people may donate a voluntary burnt offering in partnership. You can save a lot of money. You have lots of friends. You all want to come close to Hashem. You make a big deal out of it. But you're not going to eat any of it. It's all going to the altar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarav. So he is bothered by the fact that you have the first part of the verse singular and the latter part of the verse plural. One of the problems you're going to have to try to figure out is where does it begin, where does it end? In other words, where do you put the strong comma to separate the first part from the second part? And try to make sense out of it. In other words, why is it like this? So he brings right away where Rashi explains, Melamed shnayim mitnadvim ola b'shutafo. So 2 people, we learn from this, that 2 people can bring this voluntary offering, but he's bothered. He says, Eina maspik liashev hamikra lechabro mirosh l'sofo. But I don't know where to maspik. There's not enough of clarity to resolve in this verse where the beginning and the end separates. I don't know where to stop it. So if you notice, at least on this sheet, there's a colon. Okay, there is a colon. I know that on the source sheet it's a semicolon, but either way, that's where it's broken up. So when a man among you brings an offering to Hashem, that's as if it's a whole sentence on its own. And the second part of the sentence, which is seemingly a sentence on its own, from the animals, from the cattle, or from the flock, you shall bring your offerings. Remember, the beginning is singular, the end is plural, and that's where to break it up. Venir lefarish. It sounds like what he's saying is like this. Shirotzu lahazir kol makrive korban lashem, that it's coming to warn, to give like a hazara to anybody who's bringing a korban to God, that guess what? This is so important. We'll see. That's why I think in this, look at number B in the Rashi, it says amen. It's Hebrew Adam. Why is this term used here as opposed to ish? And Rashi says it alludes to Adam. Adam Harishon. Adam Harishon, the first man on earth. He wasn't Jewish. No. No way, no how. Just as Adam, the first man, never offered sacrifices from stolen properties, since everything was his, so too, you must not offer sacrifices from stolen property. And this is going to be the running theme for a while. But he does want to go into the original offerings made by both Adam and the sons, Cain and Abel, and he wants to teach us what we should not do, that there's lessons to be learned. right? Who's wise? Someone who learns from every man. Kol Adam. So he says, this is a warning for anybody who wants to bring an offering. Anyone, Jew or non-Jew. Shelo yikashlu b'shnei dvarim. You should not become trapped or stumbled in the two things which Cain and Abel, Cain v'Hevel, stumbled in. Remember, they were the first ones to bring a korban to offer up to God. What did Cain do? First of all, I want you to just know that if you go to, and I didn't highlight it properly, maybe I did, number 8 in Genesis chapter 4, it's verses 2 through 4. He really wanted us to only look at 4. If you go to number 4, right, Abel brought the firstborn of the flocks, and the Lord turned to Abel and his offerings. Okay, I really think I messed up, but let's go back to 2. And we're talking about his mother, Eve. She continued to bear his brother Abel, and Abel was what? A shepherd. So we'll see later in Pasuk 4, he brought from the flocks. So he was a shepherd, and he brought from, and what about Cain? Cain was a tiller of the soil. So we see in verse 3 that he brought from the fruit of the soil. So the Torah tells us what they did as a living, an occupation, and what they brought, which was very consistent. Okay? Abel brought, he was a shepherd, and he brought from the flocks, and Cain was a tiller of the land, and he brought from the what you would think of, something from the ground. So what was Cain's mistake? Cain brought, Chazal tell us, flax seed. Flax is very common and inferior. It's not a very expensive, and it's not very high quality. Of course, after you work it, you can make some very nice clothing from it, but still linen doesn't meet the same as silk. But anyway, the mistake that Cain made, I'll call it a nikshal. The stumbling block that affected Cain was that he brought from the most inferior products, and Chazal tell us it was zera pishtan, from the flaxseed. And he does get into this idea that the Ramban, as I mentioned, the Ramban held that it's a soul for a soul. So therefore, when someone sins with their soul, they need to bring a nefesh behema, the animal soul, in place of their own soul. Now, Hashem has a lot of mercy for the poor, so he allows a poor person to bring a mincha offering, which does not have a soul. It literally doesn't have a soul. But he does want to connect the soul to it anyway. He says, Umalo olav kilu hikriv nafsha. Yet the Torah itself says when a soul brings, so we see that there is, as if even though the poor person is bringing a cake or bread, some kind of flour offering, it's as if his own soul is being offered up. And because the pasuk says, V'nefesh ki takriv mincha, and that would be in number 7, Leviticus chapter 2, verse 1. And what about Hevel? Abel, what was his problem? He did bring from the best. So what was his problem if he brought from the best? You know what it says by him? He brought second. And it says, interestingly enough, Gamhu, he also brought, which means it didn't initiate from within. He was keeping up with the Schwartzes. He was keeping up with the Katzes or the Joneses. It wasn't an offering to Hashem. His offering was to show off, or as if you were worshiping it to people. You were offering it to people because it was in the eyes of people. Well, again, there wasn't anybody around, but the idea is that it didn't come from within. It was only awoken within him because of someone else. So let's read.
Not to God, to a man. The idea of Abel.
Abel.
He brought the best one, but
he did bring the best. Mekom mekom lo tovasa. It's not good what he did. Shelo nitorer el hakorban me'atzmo. He didn't bring it on his own initiative. V'lo nizdarez lemitzvah zu me'atzmo. He didn't come on his own to do this. Ad acher sharo hikriv Kain korban. It was only after he saw Kain offer, as nikanebo. Then he had either a jealousy. Now there's an unhealthy jealousy and there's a healthy jealousy, right? So kinat sofrim marbe chachma. When you see other wise people and you want to be wise as well, so that should increase your chachma. Okay, it shouldn't arouse a misplaced and infantile jealousy. That is not healthy. Okay, let me just turn off my camera. Someone's trying to call. It's not allowing me to see who it is. Oh, that was you. That was you. Thanks. But it says Hevel Hevi Gamhu. So in the English, which is, we go back to the number 8, and Abel he too brought. Why does the Torah have to tell me he too brought? We already know he's bringing. So it's because he's bringing also because what motivated him to bring. The older, Cain, who brought Lahashrat Atmo Elav. He wanted to equate himself to his brother. Okay? So that's a mistake. So we now know that we should overcome these mistakes when we bring offerings, when we make efforts to come close to Hashem. Okay, number 1, not to bring the most inferior. What we would like for ourselves, that's what we should do for Hashem. Okay? And it should come and be aroused from within us. But he doesn't finish there. He's going to go on. That's why it says, Adam ki yakriv michem, which again, it's Lashon Yachid. It's a singular language to tell you what? One thing I forgot to mention, I just wondering, why are we saying this applies to all people? Because I made a chart here, anyway, they try to copy the chart from the art scroll, and it goes through all the different animal offerings, and I made an arrow by the Ola burnt offering. It's a voluntary offering. The only offerings we accept from the Gentiles are voluntary offerings. So this particular offering is a voluntary offering, and it's personal. It's not a communal offering. It's from the sheep, goat, or cattle. And so I just wanted to bring that out, that when it comes to non-Jews, we accept their voluntary offerings. And that's why Adam here...
I have a question, but afterward.
If it's pertaining to this, please ask now.
Yeah, but in Gan Eden there were no korbanot. And he didn't learn it. They didn't learn from...
Okay, so we're going to deal with that right now, okay? So why is it Lashon Yachid? To tell you, Shamakriv yeh ka'adam harishon b'korbanah. It should be just like Adam, the first man, when he made his offering. Shahaya yachid ba'olam. He was alone in the world. Kshem shemize hatzad haya nitzon min hagezel. When you're the only person in the entire universe, then everything either belongs to you or belongs to nobody, but it doesn't belong to someone else. And therefore, remember I mentioned the whole idea here is to teach you to do not steal, and don't think that you can take your stolen money and buy offerings or steal someone else's offering. This is something that would be considered so disgusting to God. You can't even imagine. Since he was all by himself and alone, everything belonged to him. This actually would save him from that which Hevel fell in. Because remember, if there's someone else offering and you have jealousy, so if everything then belongs to you, there's no jealousy. Since he was all alone in the world, there's no question that for Adam Rishon that the korban comes from within himself, and it wasn't aroused by seeing anybody else. Not because he saw anybody else. That's why it says Adam. That this is how you should behave, just like Adam Rishon. That's why it says Adam. You should offer from what? From you. From, it's in the English, it's from among. How does he say it? When a man among you brings an offering. But I don't know if that's how he wants you to read it. Ki yakriv michem shetihye hakrava michem v'lo mezulatchem. It should be from you and not from anybody else. Ki michem ubachem, from you and with you, yavo hit orus el hamakriv. That's where the arousal should come from, within you, not from other people. Ze korban Hashem. Then it's truly an offering to God, as the verse says. When a man from among you, right, from within, brings this offering, singular fashion, it is an offering to God. And that's where the period is, as if there's a period. Okay? When you're not thinking about anybody else or keeping up with the Schwartzes, it's purely yours to God, it's acceptable. And this comes to exclude what? This excludes someone who's not being aroused from within. It's not from within you, then it's not a korban to God. It's not accepted. I mean, only Hashem knows. The whole arousal came from outside, from other people. Not from within you. But rather, he's offering the offering to himself. It's for his own glorification. It's not to God. Anytime a person is aroused with a jealousy, an unhealthy jealousy, from his friend, so then all his actions are only to glorify himself and are not for God, but it's for himself and for man. And then what comes out from this? Nimsa she'ena korban l'shem Hashem. It's not a korban to God. Ki'im l'shem habrios. It's offering it to humans. And this is what it means. This is the Gemara in Shabbos. If you want to write it down, it's Gemara Shabbos 28b. It says, Shur shehikriv Adam Rishon. Adam, the first man, I'm going to call it a unicorn, but he calls it an ox. Adam, the first man, offered an ox. Keren echa achat hayalo b'mitzcha. There was one horn coming out of his forehead. Lechach nizdame lo shur bal keren achas. It just happened to be, he wants to make an offering to Hashem. Hashem brings this ox near him. He sees it. He captures it to bring it up to Hashem. And this thing has one horn growing out of its forehead. Ki haya doime al adam. It was just like Adam himself. Shahaya keren echad. As if he had one. Meaning to say, shahaya yechid b'olam. Adam was all alone in the world. V'lo gazon mishum adam. He couldn't steal from anybody. Either everything was hefker, ownerless, or he owned it. V'lo nitorer mishum adam. And his arousal to bring the korban also didn't come from anybody. It came from within. Ki'im miatzma. Meaning michem, from within. Al kain ola korbano l'ratzon. That's why it went up and was accepted willingly by God, favorably. Nimsa korban l'Hashem. It comes out that when we make that period, right, the first part of the verse is singular, it ends at an offering to God, period. Hifsika inya. Then afterwards, the second part of the verse says, from the animals, lahotzi zerapishten, to exclude the most inferior of whatever could be grown from the ground, which was the flax, which Cain brought. Eliyase keheva, shehevi, but rather be like Abel that brought what? The best of the best, the fattest of his sheep. Takrivu karbanchem, plural. Mechel vehen, from the fats. Hachelik muvchar she'adam boicher le'atzmo. The choicest of the choices that you would, if you would, for yourself, that you would give to yourself, that's what you're going to give to Hashem. The best of the best. And that's what it means, karbanchem, plural. Because it's not only yours, but now it's God's. You're going to bring it up and come close and give it up to the altar on high. And that's why it says, karbanchem loshen rabim, that Rashi mentions that more than you can be in partnership with other people to bring it up. Okay. Some say, Adam ki yakriv michem. What does it michem? From your own body. We said the arousal comes from within. What are you offering up? You're actually offering up yourself. You understand? When you make an offer, you're offering up from you. What does that mean? Either through the fasting or through a broken spirit. We spoke about this many times. What does God want? He doesn't want your karbanos. He wants your spirit. He wants your broken spirit. Zo korban Hashem. That's what it means to have a korban to Hashem, an offering to God. Remember, we say a korban really means to come close. Chelek gevo levad. It's actually all going to God. Therefore, whatever you're going to be offering up from the animals, whether it's the cattle or whatever, zek korbanchem. This is your korban. That some of the offerings some of them are burnt, but some of them are going to be shared by the kohanim, and some are going to be shared additionally by the owner himself. Therefore, it mentions karban chem lashon rabim, because it doesn't always only go up to Hashem, but it's shared by many people. Okay, the latter part, I'm not sure, I think it'll be the last part. Doing okay? Have a good Shabbos. I don't know. Adam ki yakri, Rashi says, karbanos nedava diber ha'inyan. So if we go back and we know we're talking about karbanos, it looks like, it's like number 1, number A. If you go back to number 6, I broke it down into 4 different things. Rashi says, when a man among you brings a sacrifice, yakriv ki yakriv, when he brings, we're not dealing here with obligatory, right? In which case it would have said a man shall bring, but it doesn't say when a man, meaning he has to bring, but when a man happens to bring, which is voluntary. Rashi says scripture here is speaking of voluntary. I'll just read in Hebrew. Kishiyakri karbanos nedava diber inyan. It's talking about voluntary offerings. Adam. Why does the word Adam appear? Ma Adam lo hikriv min hagezel. Just like a person should not offer from stolen property. Rashi says, Osa Rashi techila perish. That's why Rashi brings that as first. Ki yakriv. And only afterwards he explains what Adam is and all these other aspects. Because in the beginning, Lefish matchila lo kasha Adam. Adam lama nemar. Why does it say Adam? Because you can actually say Shabbat lema'e ta'umos. It comes to, you might come to say it comes to exclude the nations. That it comes to, right? It comes to exclude them. But guess what? Because why? She'ein kroim Adam. Because in normal cases, we don't use the word Adam to talk about the Gentiles. She'ein mekabli mehem korban choiva. We don't accept from the non-Jews obligatory offerings. Aval akshav, since we're talking about voluntary offerings, ki yakriv, so we're mura al hashakorban nidava medaber. We are talking about voluntary offerings. V'amru chazal ish ish. Now if you go to chapter 32:18, which you should find in, it's 22:18. It's number 9. See, when we talk about the Jewish people, it says ish ish mi beis Yisrael. Speak to Aaron and to his sons and all the children of Israel and say to them, any man, but it doesn't say Adam, it says ish ish, whatsoever from the house of Israel. So we see the Rabos Hagoyim Shenodrim Nidarim Unidavos Ki Yisrael. That this verse over here in VaYikra is coming to include even non-Jews who make all kinds of, remember it's voluntary, but they made oaths, or they want to give gifts to God like a Jew. Im came Adam lamenemar elama Adam lo hikri min hagezel. Again, it's stressing over again that just like a man, meaning Adam Rishon, the first man, did not offer from stolen property, the lashon min hagezel still needs explanation. Because it could have said, lo hikriv davar gazul. It could have just said, and we're talking about the Gemara here and the Medrash, he didn't offer from something that was stolen. Why does it have to say, lo hikriv min hagezel? It says he didn't offer from the stolen. It could have just said he can't offer up anything that is stolen. So it seems, according to Rashi, everybody knows, nobody would ever in their wildest dreams think that you would take something stolen and offer it in the temple of God. Ki atu b'shufteni askinin. I mean, anybody with a simple concept of a brain would never do such a thing. Umi peti yasur lasos avera kadesh yasur bo mitzvah. Who would ever be so foolish to do a mitzvah, to do a sin, in order to do what they think is a mitzvah, right? We don't do sins in order to accomplish closeness to God. Oh, especially if there's no benefit. Remember, what are we talking about? Burnt offerings. Burnt offerings, you don't get any benefit. So like you might come to the conclusion, if you were a judge or a lawyer, that if there was, like we call it motive, right? There's a crime committed, there has to be some kind of benefit. But if there's no benefit, then why would a crime be committed, right? You want to prosecute somebody, you find the motive. Why would it benefit that person? But if there's no benefit, it's a burnt offering. Why would anybody, I mean, we're just like compounding reasons why nobody would bring a korban like this from stolen property. So perhaps the case could be where the person is living not a healthy lifestyle. Maybe he owns a casino, whatever. I'm using an example. Maybe he's Bugsy Malone, he's a hitman. Somebody whose profession itself is not kosher, and his money is basically stolen. He didn't actually go out and steal the money, but he earned it in not a kosher fashion. And maybe he'll take from the stolen money and use some of that to buy. This is answering up why it says min hagezel, and not just don't offer up stolen, but don't offer up from that which is stolen. And we understand that now. Zimot zu, with this scheme, asher choshav shebazeh, turn the page. All right, who's going to scheme to do such a thing? That he would think that he would get atonement for that which he gave over from his hand. And that's why it says min hagezel, not even from that we were stolen. And which really comes into the other thing that Rashi says, because we go back to number 6 again, it says from animals, but not all of the animals. What animals you wouldn't bring up? Animals from bestiality relationships, right? To exclude the case of animals that are cohabited with a human, whether active or passive. So to exclude anything that has this, nastiness about it. So he comes out and he says, Shapar Shazu, this whole idea is all about warnings not to bring stolen items to the temple, or in exchange for your offerings. Techilasa ve'emtza'ita v'sofa azhara al gezel. The beginning, the middle, and the end of this parsha all warns about stolen property. In the beginning it says, Adam ki yakriv, a man when he offers, so we already discussed that. Adam Rishon didn't have any stolen property. And what about the middle? So if you look at chapter 1, verse 16, we're talking about the bird sacrifices. What do the birds do? They eat. I'm not going to say it's all stolen property. A lot of it's probably hefker, probably ownerless. But they do go into people's yards, and they do take things that don't belong to them. That's birds are free birds, right? So it says in chapter 1:15, you shall remove the crop along with the entrails, cast it next to the altar on the east side to the place of the ashes. It doesn't go on the altar. You kill the bird, right? The Kohen uses his thumb from the back and flicks off the neck. He's dead. The bird is dead, but you don't use I guess the crop is part of the head, and the entrails, meaning the stomach. You got rid of that because what is it? It has stolen property. So that's a warning against bringing stolen property onto the altar. Lefisha oif nizon minegezo, because that's what birds do. They nourish from stolen property. And at the end, now look at chapter 5, verse 23. So I wonder if I have it here. This is towards the end. And it shall be, when a man has sinned and is guilty, he should return the article which he has robbed, or the funds which he had withheld, or the item which had been deposited with him, or the article which he had found. So it's another warning. You have the beginning, the middle, and the end of our Parsha, all dealing with a warning against stolen property. Because the whole concept of what a korban represents, coming close to God, and what stolen property represents is really distancing yourself from God. Ki a korban makriv shchina. By bringing the korban, it brings down God's presence. And the gezel is merchika, it distances it. As it says in Tehillim 12:6, look at Psalms 12:6. It says, because of the plunder of the poor, because of the cry of the needy, now I will arise, the Lord shall say, I shall grant them salvation, I shall speak concerning them. So the idea of oppressing the poor and hearing the cry of the needy, so God says, no, that doesn't work. Mishod ni'im me'ankat evyonim ota akum yom. Hashem will come back for the salvation. What does it mean? Shemakriv behemato, when somebody goes ahead and offers their animal. Ki'ilu hikriv nafsho. It's as if he offered up his own soul. Ki mamono shel adam kenafsho dami. The money of a person is like his own soul. Ki benafsho yavi lachmo. Because through his soul, his efforts, comes his food. As it says in Deuteronomy 24:6, one shall not take the lower or the upper millstone as a security, because he's taking life as security. When somebody needs a loan, okay, let's say he owns a mill, so the person who took the loan, the guy who gave the loan, even the security that he took from the person, if the person's livelihood depends on it, he has to give it back so he can make some money, right? So that's why we're calling it. It says, "Ki nefesh hu choyvel." He's actually taking the life as security, and that is problematic. But we're talking about somebody's livelihood is his. That's why they call it livelihood. It's his life. And then it's also written in Mishlei 22:23. For the Lord will plead their cause and rob those who rob them of life. The robbing of the poor is taking their life. Well, anybody, really, not even the poor. Mixas nefesh bekula. Stealing part of someone's soul is like stealing their whole soul. Aval hamakri behema gezula. So now we understand that if someone offers up a stolen animal, shelo amalbo, he didn't work for it, v'lo cholo yodabo, none of his efforts went towards acquiring that animal, ektia tamur l'nafsho. How can that possibly serve as an exchange for his soul? So now we're going to open up to questions.
Shama